from the Denver Broncos Media Center, welcome to Broncos Country Tonight with Ryan Edwards and Benjamin Allbright.
All right, welcome to Broncos Country Tonight. Broncos are in phase one of OTAs, and we have finally heard from some players talking about Russell Wilson and what he means to this team as they are now in the building. And boy, it was great listening to Courtland Sutton and Justin Simmons talking about the buzz around the building, the juice. That's one of the words that Courtland Sutton used. And he said, look, it wasn't like he wasn't here when Peyton Manning was here, but for him and everybody he's talked to is very reminiscent of that.
Yeah, it's what they imagine that atmosphere was like when they hear about it from people who were there, and I would say that it's probably pretty comparable. Talking to you and I talked to Albert, and I talked about Russ kind of being laid back, and he kind of side-eyed me. He's like, I wouldn't call him laid back. It's that public persona of being laid back, but in private, he's there's spot corrections, and and he's up in you, if you're doing the wrong thing, and so. I think that's good. I think it's good to kind of have that accountability and that standard. Set the standard high. You can always dial it back a little bit. If you set the standard low, you can't always ratchet it back up. And so I think having that intensity and having somebody that demands that level of excellence, I think it's a good thing for a lot of these young players that haven't experienced professional success the way that most of them did in college.
It's going to be an interesting balance because they also got a chance for the first time to meet Nathaniel Hackett face-to-face. Mm-hmm. And you heard from Justin Simmons, said, hey, it felt like a conversation. Felt kind of casual, like something you would have with almost anybody. But you heard Courtland Sutton talking about his energy, and so you're talking about Russell Wilson and his energy and it being upbeat, and the same thing with Nathaniel Hackett. But you're right, it's a different level. I think when we've been talking about this on the radio show a lot, I know we've talked about it on the TV show. I think it's going to be very fascinating to watch that balance play out because there's going to be a little bit of Nathaniel Hackett who's pretty much positive about almost everything. He's always excited about everything. Mm-hmm. Russell Wilson's excited, but he's a super intense kind of dude. We just haven't gotten a chance to see much of Nathaniel Hackett, and I think that's going to bear out over time.
Yeah, and I think the two of them will balance each other out a little bit.
I agree.
Hackett will make sure the guys are having fun, and Russell will make sure that everything's where it's supposed to be in terms of attention to detail, kind of on the field. The one thing I don't want is Nathaniel Hackett to become Jason Garrett, the hand clapper and everything. Like I don't want that. That's my one, and I don't fear that, but somewhere in the back of the recesses of my mind, I do fear that. So. But I think they'll be good for each other. I think Russ's, Manning-like mindset. I think the balance of Hackett's almost Pete Carroll-like, wanting to have fun.
Right.
I think the two of them can make some good music together. The difference is that Nathaniel Hackett philosophically wants to do things the way that Russ wants to do things, where Pete Carroll wants Russ Wilson to do things the way Pete Carroll wants.
I'm so glad you pointed that out because I was literally getting to the next point. So Russ actually has experience with that kind of personality as a head coach, maybe a bit of that rah-rah guy.
Maybe a little less bubblegum, but
maybe just a little bit less. But you're right, philosophically, what Pete Carroll and what Nathaniel Hackett do, at least early on, from what Nathaniel's told us he wants to do, seems stark contrast.
Yeah, and it's the thing. He very, very clear that he wants to do what Russ wants to do, and that he wants to make this, Russ's offense within the confines of what it is that they want to do. And I think that they'll find a way to, to kind of marry that up. So. I don't foresee any problems here. It doesn't look like there's, on the front end, it doesn't look like that. But until they hit the field, you never truly know.
One of my favorite moments from the press conference was Justin Simmons talking about how he scouted the free agent additions on the defensive side of the ball. And if that doesn't scream like I'm a captain, I take ownership of this side of the ball, that is 100% what it is. Justin Simmons, one of the highest paid guys on this team, and he is, for all intents and purposes, had been momentarily even a face of the franchise. Now, of course, it's to Russ, but even last year, we were talking about Justin Simmons, the captain on the safety, the captain on the defensive side. He's you're one of your best defensive players. And I absolutely love that. I kind of always wondered that. I think from a media or a fan side of things, like when new guys come into the building, did you spend some time watching what they do and understanding their job and how they go about things, maybe even asking some other players that played with them? Mm-hmm. And I know some of that happens through the grapevine. Sometimes you get a text random like type of thing. But I love what he sort of pointed out. He's like, no, I actually watched Randy Gregory and DJ Jones. I watched K'Wan Williams. I wanted to watch and see what they do. And I thought that was cool.
Yeah, and knowing what your teammates are capable of coming into something and then seeing it on the field as you guys put this defense together, I think that's invaluable. I think that's something that.
I mean, even it's not a position you play.
Well, right. But I mean, knowing what to expect out of the guys in front of you, especially as a safety, where you've got to take everything in. We talked to Steve Atwater about that. You got to take everything in. I believe that there's an inherent value to that. I do believe there's inherent value to, and I think that there's an inherent value to self-scouting too. Like just scouting your own and scouting your own team and kind of stepping back from an uncritical eye. They haven't played together yet. Mm-hmm. So he probably has more of a critical eye than he would if they had played together. Well, that's my brother. I'm gonna let
Agreed.
That kind of thing. So you can kind of come into this with an unbiased filter, look at what they can do and what they can't do, or at least what they haven't shown they can do, and figure out if you can get that out of them, or if that's something they can't do, and how do we compensate. So I think that's a good thing to look at. I think it's a good thing to do on the front end.
Agreed. For Courtland Sutton, one of my favorite moments was he talked about moving past individual successes to team successes. And you're going to have the individual successes just by being on an offense with Russell Wilson, right? We've seen the successes of DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett. They've had a really efficient running game for the most part through his tenure there with the Seattle Seahawks. So you have to imagine guys like Javonte are in line for a nice season. Courtland Sutton, Tim Patrick, Jerry Jeudy. We don't know the full receiving core, how any individual is going to specifically benefit just yet. We could speculate, but under that perspective, for Courtland Sutton as a guy who was a Pro Bowler, right? Last year was a little bit of a down year because he was working his way back from injury. Understanding that now this is Russ's team, understanding that from the offensive side of the ball, whatever we can do to just win games. And I think that's an interesting perspective.
Yeah, the individual accolades and production, all that kind of stuff will come. If the goal is to win the football game and by proxy to win enough football games that you ultimately wind up winning a Super Bowl, the individual statistics and accolades will take care of themselves. It's like that scene from, Batman Begins, where he falls through the ice or whatever, and Liam Neeson's telling him to rub his cheek. He's like, rub his arm. He's like, rub your chest. Your limbs will take care of themselves. It's kind of the same thing. Mm-hmm. Take care of the core philosophy here, and that's winning. The accolades will take care of themselves.
I like your little Batman reference there. It's good. Not everybody brings Batman into sports talk radio. They probably should.
I'm trying to figure out how to get Bruce Wayne in here a little bit more. I feel like he gets left out.
You're not the hero that we deserve.
It's the one you have right now.
Last couple thoughts here. Justin Simmons talking about having Kareem back. Mm-hmm. I thought that was a really cool moment, and just what he means on the field, off the field, in the locker room, that kind of thing.
Off the field in the locker room is a big thing because he is that guy. He have that leadership. He has seen it all. He's been around the league a long time. He has a ton of experience. On the field, he's not the same player that he was just 2 years ago. And so, I think he's going to be used a little bit differently. I think he's going to be more of a low zone slot corner type guy who will have some safety rotation, some linebacker rotation. I think he'll be used kind of similar to the way Tyrann Mathieu did for the Kansas City Chiefs. I don't think he's going to be a too high safety all year. I do think he'll play some too high safety, but I don't think he's going to be a too high safety. I think they really want to get Caden Stearns in that rotation and his athleticism. But I think what Kareem Jackson provides in terms of A, versatility, and B, locker room leadership allowed them to go back to the well. They were kind of hesitant, on re-signing him. They wanted to wait till the draft and see how that shook out and then go into that. But then once the Steelers crept in and gave the offer, they kind of had to put their cards on the table. So
makes a lot of sense. For Benjamin Allbright, I'm Ryan Edwards. We'll continue next week on Broncos Country Tonight.